Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Luke Young. I'll be guiding you through the masterclass today. We'll probably give it another 30 seconds or so just to allow any others to join us. Thank you all for attending as well, and welcome to Crunch if this is your first experience with us. This is going to be a combined Crunch Free and Crunch Pro masterclass as well. So we've got a bunch of different clients joining us today. I am also joined by my colleague Katie, she's sitting in the background at the moment. She's just going to be answering any questions that you may have as we move through this class. At the end, I will try and get a Q&A session in, so I'll have a quick look through the questions as well. So if there are any that are unanswered, I will try and get to those for you. But rest assured, if any get missed, I will be in touch with you directly to answer those. But fire your questions away as we go through. Katie's going to keep an eye on that, and she'll do her best to answer them as we progress through the class. So a short and sweet summary, I guess, of what we're going to be looking at today is setting up your account. As I just mentioned, is changing your business details, things like your address. You want to make sure that they're on your invoices. Uploading your business logo, again, that can be put on the invoice as well. Simply adding your bank account information, and we'll touch on open banking and why it's such a good feature to have if it's possible to set it up with your bank. We'll look at creating suppliers so that you can start recording your expenses. We'll also look at some quick wins. So this will be things like using Snap, which is an expense app. So that you can literally take a photo of a receipt and it will upload the information into your account. That's also really, really good to use. Recurring expenses is simply another time-saving feature. So recurring expenses you'll use for monthly payments, direct debit, standing orders, things that are always the same every single month. Why enter it manually each month if you can just let the system automate it for you? We'll go through setting up your client so that you can actually start invoicing through the Crunch platform as well. And then we'll touch down on bank reconciliation. Now, depending on the time, I'm aware that there's a few of you today, which is awesome, but I don't want this to drag on too long. So I'll give you as much info about bank rec as I can. And if you want any more info, I will provide you with some resources and links to help centres and things like that so that you can have a look into that a bit further. As it mentions, the last point is going to be the help centre. So I'll show you how you use that, and you'll be glad to know that it's something that we've integrated into the software as well. So you don't have to go all the way to external websites and start searching. You can do it all from within the software. Okay. So I think without any other delay, then we should probably crack on. So assuming that you've all got your account set up, you've logged in at least once, and you have access to the software. Of course, if you want to do this with me, great. Feel free to do it alongside. I'm aware that I'm blessed with dual monitors. So if you're lucky enough to have the same, then of course one screen for the session and one screen for the software. But if not, don't worry, I am going to send this out afterwards so that you've got a point of reference and you can go through it in your own time. So let's assume that you are logged in. So this is your home page, and what you're currently looking at is just a simple dashboard. Okay, so you've got a greeting message here. It should be your own name. To the right hand side, this is what's called a dynamic card. Anything like this I'm going to refer to as a card. In that case, as you'll see, they look like cards, so that's the easiest way to explain them. So this dynamic card here it's basically going to change with different messages each time you log in. So it will be things like giving information about Snap. It will be giving information about upgrading to different packages, for example. Underneath, you've got just some quick links for business guides, an external website for our knowledge articles, which is super handy if you want to keep up to date with things like tax thresholds, VAT rates if you're registered, things like that. And underneath is just our roadmap. So if you want to see if any new features are coming out, or if you think, oh, that would be great, have a look on there, because we might have already thought about it and are looking to implement it. Now, if it's your first time logging in, Yours will look slightly different to this. So this account that I've got here, I've pre-populated with a couple of pieces of data, just because I want to give you an idea of what your account could eventually look like once you started to build. So the chances are, if it's your first time, this will look slightly different, but the principle's the same. So this will give you some very quick links to jump between the different menu items that I'm going to run through in just a moment. So we'll move on from that for the time being. On the left is your menu items. So as you can see, home, sales, expenses, banking, VAT and self-assessment. I'll go through those in finer detail, but first, let's go through the settings of your account. Now, this is very, very important. As I say, your business address, for example, is going to display on your invoices. So you want to make sure that that is correct before you do anything else at all. So in the top right-hand corner, you want to look for this icon here. Of course, this will say your name, your business name. So select this, go to settings, and then from here, you've got your business name. Chances are it probably just says your own personal name for now, but if you do operate under a business name, use the pencil icons to change it. You can change any of these via that pencil icon there, but this is the important one, business address. Chances are, if it's a brand new account, it's just going to say something along the lines of Sole Trading Street or something like that anyway. It's going to be a very generic business address. Absolutely make sure you change this first before you do anything. So again, just use the pencil icon, make the necessary changes, hit save, and then we can move on. Underneath is your business logo. If you have one, awesome. Select this, find the image on your computer. Very typically, it's going to log me out right now. Nothing like some technical troubles while you're going through a live session. Let me just quickly jump back in. So let's do that again. Settings, business logo. There we go. And then you choose the file, locate it on your desktop, and then import it from there. Once you select upload, you'll get a preview of the image here. And one thing to bear in mind is there are some limitations, and well, there's two limitations here really. So you've got one that it has to be 200K in size, so a relatively smallish logo, and it has to be a JPEG or a PNG file. That's more or less it. If you find that the image is too big, just shrink it down a little bit and see how you get on. You can then preview the image as well if you want to see an example of how it would look on the invoice as well. So again, that's just something you could do. If you don't want to do that, you absolutely don't have to. I'm going to jump back into the settings again. And then you've got some personal details. So of course, your name, your email address, your phone number, and any marketing preferences as well. I'm going to leave all of those because I'm happy with them. That's basically it with the settings. As I say, the important thing here is the business address. Okay, if you do nothing else on this page and the only thing you do is the business address, fine, absolutely fine. So we'll now move on through the different menu items. So I think it makes sense first. So rather than going in a chronological order from top down, let's go in a way that I would personally set up the account myself to make sure that I've done everything that I need to beforehand so that I can then just simply start using the features as they should be done. So I'm going to go into banking first, and we'll start to add business bank accounts or credit card accounts or whatever it is that you've got. So you want to go to banking and then accounts and cards. Okay. And as I mentioned, I set some of these up earlier just because I want to give you the idea, an idea of how it's going to look when you start building them. So as I mentioned, I refer to these, it's almost like a card system. As you'll see, it's a stack in some ways. So you've got your main bank account, so that's current or savings, and then you've got credit cards underneath here. Okay. Now, if it's your if you haven't entered a bank account yet, it's likely you're going to see a screen that says something like, you haven't entered a bank account, enter one here. Okay, so if you just simply select the button that says add bank account, or if you have given it a go, you're looking for this icon down here. Okay, so I'll quickly add one now, and then I'll explain exactly what each of these sort of rows are referencing. So you go to new bank account, you can select a bank account, which is a current or savings, or a credit card. We'll go ahead and just do a current one for now. Now, the display name is simply how you recognize it. So it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It could literally just be current or savings, whatever you want to call it. The one thing I would suggest though is if you do have more than one current or savings account, just name this in a way that you're able to easily differentiate between multiple accounts. So, if you've got one current account that's with, a certain bank provider, HSBC for instance, or whoever, and then you've got another with someone else, just then change that to be, just so that it helps you know which is which. So I'll leave that as current Lloyds for now. Of course, the bank is just a provider. The opening balance now, this can confuse people and it's totally understandable. So the opening balance it's basically going to be the very first transaction that has occurred at the beginning of the financial tax year. Now you'll see underneath, you've got a note here that says this is your balance at the start of your first financial year with Crunch, which is the 6th of April. Now, this means that if, let's say you've not even opened a bank account yet, okay, you haven't got a business bank account, you haven't got one set up, okay, the chances are when you do open that account, it's going to be 0. So you can literally leave this as 0, okay? If, however, you're joining us partway through a year, so let's say you had your business running in the previous tax year, chances are that the opening balance is going to be different. So what you need to do is get your bank statement, have a look on your online banking, and grab the very, very first transaction on the 6th of April, okay? And then whatever the balance is on that first line, that's what you need to put here in the opening balance. Again, it can be a little bit confusing. We have got some help center materials that literally explain that scenario and give you some examples, but hopefully that's clear enough. Again, like I say, the easiest way to explain it, first transaction, the first entry on the 6th of April, look at that balance, that's what you put into that field there. I'm going to leave this as 0 for the time being. Now the account type is short and sweet enough, is it a business account? Is it a personal bank? Now, there is no rule that says you have to have a business bank account. This isn't a limited company at the end of the day where the rules are totally different. As a limited company, you have to have a business bank account. As a sole trader, not so much. I would, however, strongly recommend setting up a business bank account if you haven't done already. There's a couple of reasons for this. One of them is ideally, you want to keep your personal and your business transactions as far apart from one another as possible. It will make your bookkeeping a heck of a lot easier to manage because then you haven't got to sit down and start going through statements and saying, right, this is personal, this is business, this is personal, so on and so on. And secondly, it helps you understand where you're at financially as well. It will help you to sort of know, right, this is my money, so, I'm not going to touch this at all, and this is my business money. It will help you manage things so much easier. And also another benefit is open banking, which I'll touch on in just a moment. So personal bank accounts, you can't have open banking. Business bank accounts, you can have open banking. So that's one other thing to consider. And again, that certainly will make your bookkeeping a lot easier as well. So I'm going to put this one down as a business bank account. The next is just a verification box. So you have to confirm that it's a pound sterling account. Unfortunately, foreign bank accounts do not work with Crunch. So it has to be a pound sterling account. And then lastly, simple enough, sort code and account number. Now I'm going to make this up, but please don't do that. Make sure that you put in the exact sort code and account number of your account. And the reason for this is, well, 2 reasons. One, this will show on your invoices. So your clients will use that info to try and pay you, if you want to make sure that you are paid correctly. And secondly, it goes back to the open banking scenario again. Now I'll show you what will happen once you've keyed in your sort code and account number. So I'm just going to quickly put this in now, and I'm going to save. Okay. And as you see, there's our current Lloyds account that we've just done. Now, going back to the sort code and account number with open banking, you'll notice on this particular card that you've got this icon here. So the system's quite intuitive in respects that it knows specific sort codes and it knows whether open banking is a feature that comes with your bank account. So as you can see, a free feed is available for your bank account. I would strongly recommend going through this process now before you begin updating your account, get it set up as fast and soon as possible. So if you simply select connect your bank, you'll see this little pop-up here. I won't bore you and read you through it line by line. And as soon as you press connect your bank account, depending on who you're with, it will jump you to that online bank service. So HSBC, Halifax, Santander, whoever it is. And then you'll go through their verification process. Generally speaking, it takes about 2, maybe 3 minutes. Of course, you will need some of your online banking details at hand to do this, because it will ask you to enter certain things. But as I say, it's well worth doing, and it will save you a lot of time and probably quite a lot of headaches when it comes to bank reconciliation too. So that's it when it comes to setting up a bank account itself. Now, I'll quickly show you the credit card side as well. It's even quicker because there's even less information that you put in. So new credit card, again, the name is just the display name. So if you do have more than one, make sure that you can easily distinguish them. Last 4 is just a verification question, so that again helps you further distinguish them if you need to. The same opening balance question again, same personal and business question, and then lastly also the pound sterling. Now, one thing I will say about credit cards is that the credit cards do not have open banking. At the moment, open banking is only available on business current accounts. Okay, so savings accounts, you won't be able to set it up, and credit cards accounts, you won't be able to set it up. But generally speaking, I think the current accounts are going to be where most of your business transactions occur anyway. So we'll click save. And there we go, we've now got the MasterCard set up. So you can have as many accounts as you want. You're not limited to the amount of cards that you can add. As you can see, I've got an absolute batch of them here. And what you're looking at right now, I'll go through these rows, is the display name. There's the sort code and account number. There's the balance that I mentioned earlier as well. Now, this is real time. So as you update your account and you do things like bank reconciliation, this will change as you update your records. This we'll touch on a bit later when we get to the bank reconciliation. And then you've got some basic functions like edit, which you can change the display name, for example. And then you've got more options here, which again, I'll try and cover with you during bank reconciliation. Now, a few other items here as well that I'll highlight while I'm on banking is money transfers. Of course, you can record any money going between accounts. So if I did transfer money from a business to a savings, for example, you can record all of that as well. That is simply just recording an outgoing and an ingoing payment. Simple enough. And again, you do, in fact, most of the actions that you'll take, you'll be looking for this little icon down here. That's how you start creating new records. Bank deposits, simple enough. If you're putting your own personal money into your business, you would record it as a simple bank deposit. And then you've got interest received, so any sort of banking interest that you get, you'll need to log all of that here. And then you've also got withdrawals. Now, withdrawals are how you record that you're paying yourself. Okay, I'm aware, of course, sole traders don't get a salary per se. You know, it's not like a monthly recurring thing like you get with employment or with a limited. So literally all you will do every time that you take money out of your business to pay yourself, whatever that is, if it's 50 quid, if it's 5 grand, it matters not. You just need to log it here as a new withdrawal. So go to withdrawals here, press new withdrawal, and then you can start entering some basic info. So when did you want to take the money out? So we'll do today. Let's just use 50 quid as an example. How did you take the payment out? So it was transferred out of business in this case. And then you choose the bank account that you withdrew it from. So you'll see you get a full list of all the accounts that you've got here. I'm happy with that. So I'm going to go ahead and save the withdrawal. And there we go. I've now recorded that I've taken 50 quid out of my Lloyd's account, and that's it. That is literally it. So when you come to do things like self-assessment, for example, you can literally just look at this section and say, well, actually, I've only taken this amount, because you can just work it out by the amounts that are shown in this column here. Okay, to make it a little bit easier, you could even export the info. So rather than sort of adding everything up line by line, export it, grab the row, and then it will do the sum for you in the Excel sheet. So that's more or less it when it comes to banking. really, really simple. There's not much else to it in that respect. So let's move on to sales. Now, this is where you're going to start sort of recording your clients. So anybody that you work with, you'll need to create an invoice for them. Okay, so that whether you're doing this for backdated work, for example, you need to record it still, or whether you're actually using Crunch to send your invoices. Okay, so what we've got here is a dashboard, as you'll see. So this is going to show you any outstanding invoices. Maybe you've got missed payments from people, maybe they're just slightly late. You've also got a sales performance tab so that you can keep a record of how well your business is doing in terms of income. And then you've got things like client payments and any refunds due. I'll touch on these two a bit later, but for now, let's go ahead and set up a brand new client. Okay, so you want to go to sales, clients, and these are people that you work with. So whether it's an individual, whether it's a business, you need to set them up and add them as a client in your Crunch account. So clients, and then in the top right, you go to clients, or if you've not got any clients set up at the minute, you might also see that splash page that says add a new client or something along those lines. We'll go to new client. Now, I'm aware it says company name, but as I mentioned, if you're working with an individual, put the individual's name in there anyway. Okay, it matters not. This again is just a reference for you. So I'll do that now. So let's go with, I'm going to be really creative, just use John Smith. The invoice currency, now you've got a handful to choose from here. You can use, dollars, Australian, Canadian, American, euros, or pound sterling. Now, the default invoice currency is going to be what your invoice is created as. You can change it during the invoice creation process, but if you're always going to be invoicing the same person or business in the same currency, just set a default one there. So I'll leave that as pound sterling. Payment terms are entirely up to you. This is simply how long you're giving that client to pay you. You can leave it at 28 days, or you can amend this to be only a couple of weeks. It's entirely up to you. Okay. Now, these fields aren't required. If you want to put them in, feel free. If you've got their telephone number, add it. If you want to add their email address or even their website, add it in. That's totally up to you. The important thing on this section is the contact details. Now, make sure that you add their info in here, because if you're going to be invoicing through Crunch, you won't be able to send your invoices without these contact details put in. Okay, so I'm going to put this here again. I'm going to be really creative. Put their email there. Telephone and role aren't essential. These two fields are the important ones, but again, if you want to put those in, feel free. And then you want to check this box here, include in email, so that when you raise an invoice for John Smith, it will be sent to that particular contact info. If perhaps you are working for a business, and let's say you've got multiple contacts, maybe you work for a HR department one week, then you work for an IT department the next, doing a different job, save yourself a bit of time and just put the overall company's name up here, and then just add the individual contacts or departments within this section. Again, you can put specific email addresses in, and then you can also uncheck and check the boxes that you want the invoices to go to, right? So I'll leave that as John Smith for now. The billing address, super important. Make sure that you get this absolutely spot on, because at the end of the day, this is also going to show on the invoice. So not only will your business address show, the invoice that the address of the company or individual that you're invoicing will also show as well. So make sure that you do key this in correctly. Again, I am going to make this up, but don't follow my lead in this regard. Sales invoice note, not essential. If you wanted to leave a little personal message on there, thank you for your services, or if you wanted to put your own website info on there, feel free. Not essential though, so we'll leave that blank. Lastly, of course, is an important step, and that's including your bank details on the invoice. So make sure this box is checked. Use the drop-down menu to select the bank account you want to be paid to. So let's go ahead with the Lloyd's one we created earlier. And then you'll see here, account number, sort code. Now that gets attached to the invoice when you send it to them. Lastly is a late payment reminder. Now, this isn't essential, but it's one that I would probably recommend setting up. One, it can really save you having those awkward chasing payment conversations, which we all dread anyway. But it actually automates that whole process for you. So if I check the box and then I set an initial reminder, let's say 2 days, what that means is when my invoice terms of 14 days, which we defined earlier, is exceeded by 2 days, the system's going to start automatically sending out emails to John Smith, in my case, to say something along the lines of, hey, you've missed payment, here's a reminder of it, these are the terms, and this is the amount that's outstanding. You could also then automate continual reminders from that point on as well. So the initial one is just the trigger. Okay, so after 14 days, 2 days later, this is going to trigger, but then I can also set up continual late payment chasers afterwards. So let's say 5 days. Okay, so the first reminder goes out 2 days after the terms, but then every 5 days after that point, until my invoice is paid, the system's going to keep chasing that client for the money. So again, really, really handy. But you do get the choice of either just giving yourself a gentle reminder about it. You know, I'm aware that sometimes these things can be a little bit generic. So if you want to just give yourself a reminder so that you can, you know, reach out and send a personal, you know, reminder instead, just leave that as yourself. If, however, you don't mind it being quite generic, then you could check that box, and not only will it send you a gentle reminder, but you'll also get it will send one to the client as well for you. Right, so I'll leave that just as myself for now. I'm going to go ahead and save, and that's it when it comes to setting up a client. Now, my recommendation, if you are backdating, so let's say you're planning a bit of catch up, is to think about all the clients that you've already worked with and just start listing them all here. Okay, just think about everyone you've worked with so far that you are going to need to raise invoices for, and just start creating in this list before you do anything else. Of course, if you're a brand new business, then you can just do it on the fly as and when you need it. So that's it when it comes to setting up clients. Really, really simple stuff. So let's go ahead and use our new client to create an invoice. So what you want to do is go to invoices. And as you'll see, I set up a bunch of these a while ago, and I'll give you a quick overview of what you're looking at. So at the top here, literally is just a list of filters. So if you do end up with, you know, tons and tons of clients and you just want to split them by a specific person, use this drop down menu, and everyone that you've set up as a client will show here. You can also look by due dates, issued dates, a specific invoice number if you want to, and then you've got a couple of additional here as well. So if you only want to see things like your overdue or paid, check those boxes. What you're looking at down here is you've got status labels, so whether something's in draft, whether it's an overdue invoice, whether it's actually being paid, and then you've got your other columns here, so issued, when it was actually, you know, created in the account, was it sent by email, as you can see, you've got a verification checkbox here, and then when it's due, client, invoice numbers, and so on. So really, really simple stuff. So let's go ahead and create a new one, and then we'll go through those in a bit more detail. So I'm going to go new invoice. I'm going to select my client from this drop-down menu here. So we'll go to John Smith. You'll see that my invoice currency has already been determined because of the way I set the currency when I set John Smith up as a client. The invoice date is simply when you're creating the invoice. So let's go ahead and do that for today. Client reference and PO number, don't worry about those. Client reference is if, let's say you're working on a timesheet, or you've got a self-billing invoice or something like that, and there's already an invoice numbering system in place, and you want to marry it up with what's already in place, you can just put that in here. Again, it's not essential, but it's possible. So if, for example, you wanted to put, you know, something like, you know, to match it up with another invoice, fine, you can use that. but as I say, not essential. PO number I'm going to skip over. The payment terms, as we'll see, is now defined by 14 days as set earlier. Now, invoice options, you've got two sections here. You've got simple and detailed. Now, simple is literally if you're charging an overall cost. So if I now go to add line item, I'm going to put a description of what the service is, and you'll see that I can charge just a total amount, and then I can press save. If I'm VAT registered, it will add VAT onto the service automatically. So it does all of the calculations on my behalf. I don't have to sit there and work out, okay, well, how much do I need to add on VAT, things like that. So that is the simple method. If you're charging just a total cost, use the simple line item option. If, however, you are charging an hourly rate and you're doing it over a set period of time, you would use detailed instead. So you'd select this box here, then you'd select add line item. Again, same description, needs adding in here, and then the rate is going to be your hourly charge. So let's say it's 15, and then the quantity is the amount of hours that you're charging for. Same VAT rule applies. If you're VAT registered, it will automatically add VAT. You can go to save, and there we go. It's now worked out everything for me. So that's more or less it in that case. You've got an invoice note here as well. You've also got invoice note is similar to the client note. Don't worry about that. We'll ignore it. You've got bank account details, which, as we can see, is selected as the bank account that we chose. Payment reminders are set up, and now you can also, you've got two options: save as draft or preview and issue. Okay, now preview and issue is just going to give you a summary of what it looks like, and then you've got things like save as draft, where you can start creating estimates, quotes that you can send. Hi guys, sorry about that. I seem to be having some technical issues, which I hope have now been resolved. Please let me know if there is still any issues. Hopefully my screen is still working. Okay. Okie dokie, right, brilliant. Sorry about that. There's always something, isn't there? Always something. It's never as smooth as you would like it to be, but that is the way of things. Technology, hey. Right, let's crack on then from where we were. So we were on invoice line items, okay? So simple and detailed we've covered, right? So there's nothing else to it. As I say, I think a lot of you might perhaps use the quantity side of things, the hourly rate more than just an overall service cost. I think generally speaking, limited companies typically just send out a total cost, but the option is there for you regardless if you want to use it. Now, one thing I do want to extend further on is the VAT side of things. So let me just quickly delete that line, and I'll go back to simple. Actually, no, I'll keep it as detailed. So up here, you've got do the amounts already include VAT. Now, we saw a moment ago that I put in a cost and then it added VAT on top of that for me. However, what if you want to charge someone a cost that's inclusive of VAT in this scenario? Well, all you then need to do is select this checkbox here, go to add line item, same as before, put your description of your services, again, same rate, let's do the same amount of hours. You've still got the standard 20% being added, being included on the cost, sorry. But this time it doesn't add additional VAT on top. Instead, it just takes the total and then works out the VAT within that total. All right, so I'll quickly show you again. So we've got £90 here. So we'll see that it's £75 and it's included the £15. If, however, I uncheck this box, do the same thing, hourly rate of 15, quantity of 6, still the 20% VAT, you'll see it's now added the cost on top. So you've got a couple of ways that you can invoice your clients, especially when it comes to line items. You can use simple as the overall charge. You can use detailed for quantity and hours. And if you want to include VAT within your cost, tick that box. If you don't and you want it to just add VAT on top, leave it unchecked. Okay, so that's it when it comes to invoice line items. You can do things like adding discounts, you know, if you want to give your mates different rates and things like that, or perhaps you want to discount it for any other reason, just add your discount in, put the amount that you want to knock off, save it, and there you'll see it's taken the cost down, but it does show the discounted amount on the invoice still. Okay, so the cost doesn't just disappear. If for any reason you need to make changes, use the pencil icon as is tradition, make the changes you need to and save it. If you want to just completely get rid of a line item, use the X instead. So I'm happy with this, so I'm going to move on. As I say, when it comes to saving as draft and previewing and issue things, there's two reasons for this. So save as a draft is if, for example, you're just creating the invoice to send to somebody as a quote or an estimate for a service and they haven't committed to actually accepting it yet. You would save it as a draft. So I'll do that now. It will take you back to the overall invoices dashboard. And then what you can do is use the options menu on that draft, which is this one here, the £108 for me. Go to options, and then you've got this item here, create estimate or quote. So I'll select this. You can choose whether it is an estimate or an actual quote for somebody. It will show you a preview of what it looks like, and then you can download it as a PDF and send it on. Now, one thing to mention is a draft invoice is not legally binding. It means nothing until the point that it's become an issued invoice. So you can delete it, you can edit it, you can just leave it in your records if you really want to. It doesn't get included in anything, no self-assessment preparation or anything, okay? Only once you want to convert it to an issued invoice does it then need to be considered as part of your self-assessment, income, things like that. So with that in mind, I'm going to go back to that now, and I'm just going to use the other option of preview and issue. So once you've pressed preview and issue, this is what you'll see. You get an overall summary of what the invoice looks like. Now, if you've added an invoice logo, this will actually appear here. Okay, and as we can see, there's the business address, so that's why it's important for me to change that at the start. This is where I'm operating from. This is their trading address, which is where they're operating from. And then we can also see the invoice details. Now, one question I get quite a lot is the invoice number and why does it still say pending? Simple reason, at this moment in time, it's still a draft. You can't assign an invoice number to a draft invoice because technically it counts for nothing at this moment in time. As soon as I press issue and email or simply issue, at that point, the invoice number gets generated. And I'll show you that in just 1 second. But we can see our line items here. If I want to make changes at this point, absolutely can do so. You just press edit, make the necessary changes that you want, and then go back to preview and issue again, back to the same page. Now, you've got two options. Issue and email is if you are going to be using Crunch to raise the invoice, send the invoice directly to your client. Issue invoice is the same minus the sending via email. Now, typically, issue invoice will be used when you're backdating, or perhaps if you'd rather send the invoice in a bit more of a personal manner. So if you've got your own invoice templates, if you've got your own way of working and you're purely using Crunch to bookkeep, then issue invoice is fine. If you do want Crunch to do the work though, press issue and email invoice, which I'll do now. And as you'll see, now I mentioned earlier that if you have, let's say you're working for an organization with multiple departments, if you've added different contacts, this is where they will start to appear. So then you can just uncheck the boxes that you don't need and check the boxes that you do. The email subject is, you can change this, change it to whatever you want it to be. This is a dynamic number. So while this says pending at the moment, when this email gets sent, this will update to reflect what the actual invoice number is. And then underneath, you've got the body content. Now, again, change it to whatever it is that you want to say. I'm aware this is very, very generic, but put whatever you like in there. I'm happy with this though, so I'm going to press send, and we'll see that our draft has now changed to outstanding. So this has now become an official invoice. So I'm expecting John Smith to pay me within the term set, which is going to be due on the 9th of December. And if he doesn't get paid by that point, we've set up those late payment reminders now so that the system can start churning those out to him for me. Okay. That's more or less it when it comes to creating your invoices. So as I say, the first step will be setting up all of your clients first. Save yourself a little bit of a job. If you are backdating, just do it all in one go, and then you can start raising those invoices. And if you are just backdating and you don't need to resend them again, just use issue invoice. However, if you are using, if you're not backdating and you're using Crunch as an ongoing invoicing system, use issue invoice and email. Okay, and then you can do everything through this platform. You don't have to then download it, attach it to your email, send it manually, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so another thing worth pointing out actually while we're here is recurring invoices. Now, this, generally speaking, you would only use recurring invoices, I suppose, if you are working on something like timesheets, or maybe it's a self-billing invoice where it's the same amount at the same point, each week or each month. Like expenses that I touched on, automate them. What's the point of logging in every single week or month to create the same piece of data when you can just enable the system to do it for you? So we'll go to recurring invoices. I won't go through the whole process again because, as we'll see, it's exactly the same here, okay? But what I will do is show you the frequency. So if I wanted to change this one to a recurring invoice, you'll see we could set up an event. So the occurrence, how often do I want it to repeat? Let's do monthly, once a month on the 25th. It's going to start next month. Do you want it to end? So let's say I've got 6 months. So we'll let it go 6 times. And then do I want the system to issue the invoice for me? Absolutely. Do I want the system to email the client with the same invoice? Of course. So I'll tick these boxes here as well. Okay. And you can also give yourself reminders. So if I wanted to give myself a 2-day cushion, so on the 23rd of December, I'm going to get an email to say, hey, we're just about to send this email to John Smith. Are you okay with that? Yep, fine. So we'll now go to create event. And then if I go back to recurring, you'll see there's my schedule. So I've got the clients, the event details, how often it occurs, the next occurrence, and for what amount as well. Again, that's really, really handy for things like self-billing, timesheets, things of that nature. In terms of deleting an invoice, now you're only going to be able to delete an invoice if it's a draft. Once you've got an invoice that's either reflected as outstanding, overdue, once you've issued it, you can't just simply delete them. Instead, what you need to consider is something called a credit note. Okay, now for draft invoices, I will quickly show you how easy it is to do. So this one's a draft here. I'm going to use the options menu next to it. I'm going to go to edit. I'm going to scroll to the bottom, and I'm simply going to press delete. So nice and easy for drafts. Not so simple when it comes to something that's already been issued. Instead, what you'll need to do is go to options, scroll down to raise full credit note, press OK, and then we'll see here that the invoice says that it's been settled, okay, but it's got a credit note against it, which is why it's settled, okay. You'll notice there's no money allocated to the invoice. This purely has to stay here now as record for records purposes. It means nothing, it counts for nothing. You don't report these on self-assessment, but it has to stay on record for bookkeeping. All right, so just they're 2 things to consider. Drafts can be deleted easy enough. If you've already issued the invoice, even if you've made a really annoying mistake of like 10p, unfortunately you have to raise the full credit note against it and then raise a new one instead. One thing that might save you a bit of time though is if you've got an invoice that is, let's say this one was a couple of quid out, you could just use the options menu and go to raise similar invoice. That way it's going to populate a lot of the information for me already, date, the client, the invoice currency, the terms, etc., even the amount for the invoice line items there, and I can then make the adjustment as I see fit, and then I can just simply reissue it again. So that's more or less it when it comes to invoicing. I guess in terms of receiving payment, so let's say you have now been paid, how do you do it? Really, really easily. So let's say that John Smith, after, I've been waiting for X amounts of months to receive this payment, has finally coughed up the cash, okay? All I would need to do is go to options, record client payments, select the date that the money came into my bank account, and that has to be the date that is shown on your bank statement. I'm aware that sometimes there can be slight delays of it appearing on the statement. Just make sure that when you record it, it shows that date that it officially came in. Select the bank account that it was paid into, the amount as well. Hopefully you receive the full amount. If you do only receive a partial, you can certainly change that to be a partial amount. That's absolutely fine. And then make sure that it's allocated to the correct invoice as well. So you'll see down here, it's the late invoice. It's for £200, and I'm assigning £200 to the invoice. So I'm going to save that one. Do I want to email John to let him know that it has been settled? You can do, or you can just skip it and move on. And there we go. So that invoice has now been marked as paid, and we can see that the payment has been assigned to that invoice. So that's all done, all good. That's it when it comes to invoicing, truly. So we've now gone from setting up a client, raising an invoice, and fulfilling the invoice as paid. So we're all good in that respect. So let's move on to expenses. Now, I'm aware there's this is quite a popular topic because obviously you've got way more expense transactions than you'll likely have with invoice payments coming in and so on. Now, the first thing you'll want to do is set up your suppliers similar to clients. Now, suppliers, it doesn't really matter whether you're backdating months back or whether you're just brand new, because you are going to have a supplier to set up. And a supplier is either an individual that you're buying things from, or it's a business that you're buying things from. So, Amazon, Apple, subscription services, anything like that. So what you want to do, similar to what I mentioned about clients, is think about all of the places that you spend money, whether that's food, whether it's public transport, whether it's subscription costs, whatever it might be. Have a real good think about where you're spending money. And what you want to do is start listing all of your suppliers. As you can see with mine, I've got things like Adobe, Amazon, I've got my food and drink, my transport, flights, things like that. Now, to create a new one, again, if you've given it a go, you'll see this icon down here. And if you haven't, you'll see a splash page that says set up your first supplier. So I'm going to press new. Name is literally the place of purchase. So where is it that you're spending money? So in this scenario, let's go with, I'm going to go with TFL. So we'll go with public transport in my example. Default expense type is, you don't have to put this in, but this will be a little bit of a time saver. And it just means that whenever I create a new expense and choose TFL as the supplier, it's going to automatically assign public transport to my expense type. Again, pick from the list whatever is the most suitable. It's quite extensive, and then just simply press save. That's it when it comes to suppliers. So all you need is a reference point, so the name of the place that you're buying things from, and you can choose a default expense type if you want. Now, one thing I would suggest to really help speed up time is for everyday regular expense items like food and drink, for instance, don't bother entering all of the same, don't bother entering the specific location that you've gone. Don't put things in like Morrison's or WH Smith or whatever else it is, okay? Literally bundle those type of expenses together. So you could just simply call this supplier food and drink, set the default expense type to subsistence, which is food, and then anywhere that you purchase food from, doesn't matter, just put them all under that one supplier. You could do the same with public transport as well. So you could, in theory, just put public transport, pick the public transport option here, And then again, it doesn't matter where you've traveled or who you've traveled with, just put all of your public transport items down under this one supplier too. Okay, so I'll leave that as public transport for now. So public transport, we'll save that. Okay, and that's it. As you see, you can then start building a list of your suppliers to use to create expenses. Now, suppliers you have to have in order to start creating the expenses. So that's why I'd suggest go through this list, think about everywhere and anywhere that you could possibly spend money, add them in, you know, whether that's insurances, subscriptions for, you know, Dropbox, cloud, web hosting, whatever it is that you've got, add them all in first. Once you've done that, you can then begin adding your expenses for them. So you jump to the expenses menu item here. As you'll see, I've got a bunch that I've already set up. So you'll see my subscription costs, my public transport, my Amazon purchases for equipment, things like that. So these are the suppliers' names. These are the amounts that I'm spending. And you'll also see status labels again, whether it's paid, whether you're owed money in terms of refunds, whether it's a recurring expense as well, will all be labeled too. And then you've got your default edit and delete options to the side. So let's go ahead and create a new one. Again, use this icon in the bottom right or use the splash page, whichever one you've got on display. Select new. Now from the supplier, I'm going to choose public transport because we set up a moment ago. The date, just when did you pay for it? You've got a couple of additional options here. Attach a file, which you can use for things like receipts. Now you don't, they can literally be a photo of the receipt. Digital copies these days are fine, especially with HMRC's movement for making tax digital. So, you know, if you've got shoe boxes full of receipts, be gone with them. You can just take photos now, which happy days, makes things a lot easier to manage. Adding a note. Again, similar to invoice notes, if you want to add, you know, distinguishing things, so if you did want to specify where the journey was, you know, do that as well, that's fine. Make it chargeable to a client. Now, I won't dive too much into this, but essentially what this does is allows you to attach expenses to invoices. So if I was to set this as a chargeable item, I could pick the client from the list that I'm going to send it to. And then when I raise an invoice for the client, it will give me an option to add this expense item to the invoice. So not only then will I get paid for the work, I will also be reimbursed the expense cost as well. So that's something to bear in mind that is possible. And I will, you know, when we talk about the Help Centre, I'll show you the sort of articles and things that you can find related to stuff like that. Next up, you've got your items, very similar to the invoice line item scenario. So again, just, you know, put in a description of what it was. The expense type, now you'll notice this has already set itself as public transport, and that's because I used the default expense type drop down earlier. So I'll leave that as it is. Now, one interesting thing and really smart thing about Crunch actually is the VAT element. We saw how on invoicing, it added the VAT elements, it you know, included it within the cost if we told it to. Expenses is no different. Now, depending on the expense type that you've selected, the VAT rate will change to exactly what it should be. So we'll see here public transport is set to 0, and that's correct. There is no VAT on public transport. However, if I changed this expense type to something that does have VAT applied to it, let's say professional subscriptions, you'll see it automatically changes to standard. Okay, so this saves me a little bit of time on looking at those receipts again. Does it have VAT? Doesn't it have VAT? You don't need to bother. Let the system do the work for you. So if I now change it back to public transport, again, it automatically assigns itself as 0, which is awesome. Saves me a couple of seconds of having to look through receipts, or maybe potentially hours if you have got shoe boxes full of them. So let's put in the cost here. And then we've got, of course, the dates when you paid for the expense. Select the date there. You can use the calendar. You can type it in, do whatever you want with that date there. Specify the payment method for how you paid for it and out of which bank account. So I'm happy with that. So I'm going to go ahead and press save. And there we go. So we've got the public transport there. We've got the note attached to it as well. And it also distinguishes that it is a rechargeable item to a particular client. Now, if I wanted to, let's say, make a recurring item, just go to recurring expenses, okay, go down to the bottom right again, create the expense as you would any other, so like we've just done, and then once you've done that, select the item. Let's see where it is. Recurring expense. Okay, let me just quickly set one up now. There we go. So let's say it's a subscription. So Adobe repeats. It's almost similar to the recurring invoices section that when we set up a recurring invoice actually. So it repeats every month. When does it start? Does it end? Again, you get a similar amount of options here, never, on, or after. So I'm going to say that it's just an ongoing one. Put the description of it in here. What type is it? Again, it's automatically chosen the type and the VAT rate. Let's say that's 35. Choose the payment method and the account. Press save. And then it should take me back. There we go. So I've now just set up a monthly automated recurring expense for a software subscription, for example. So again, once you've set up your suppliers, so once you've gone through that list, I would probably suggest the next thing to do is that. Have a think about all your direct debits, your standing orders, things like that, and get those in there first, because then going forward, you can forget about them. Okay, and then the only expenses that you will need to create manually are going to be the sort of ad hoc ones, like your food, for example, which are going to have different dates and amounts and things like that. So definitely consider doing that. That's it when it comes to expenses. I guess the final bit on this page is simply making edits or deleting them. So if you want to edit, pencil icon. If you want to delete, the bin icon. And then if actually you've got an expense that's maybe similar, so let's say I bought something else from Amazon that's similar in nature, you can use these three dots here and simply select create another like this. Okay, so that's it. That's it. So we've gone through setting up your bank accounts. We've gone through setting up your clients so that we can then begin invoicing. We've done expenses as well. We've done the settings, of course, in your account so that you are sort of including the right info on your invoices. The last couple of tabs, I guess, I'll quickly run through, but first, let me give you a quick introduction to bank reconciliation. So bank reconciliation is the process of verifying the data that's in your account against your actual bank statements. So this legitimizes those transactions in HMRC's eyes, so that when they look at either your, if you have sole trader accounts, I'm aware there are some people that need them, or even things like self-assessment, you've got evidence then that you have verified these records against actual banking statements. Now, this section here is going to highlight how many bank statement entries you've got uploaded into your account. Now, if you've got open banking, this number will change as and when your open banking feed comes in. So open banking is basically a feature that connects your bank account to your Crunch account, and it will just feed in your bank statements automatically. Okay, it's a massive, massive time saver. And as I say, if you can do it, do it. It's free, so why not? If you can't, then you will need to manually upload bank statements instead, which again, you just simply do by uploading a statement using this button, and you have to use CSV bank statements. Okay, so you can get them from your online bank, download them, import them, and then you can start reconciling. In terms of the actual reconciliation, once your statement's uploaded, you will just press match now, and then all that it's going to show is the transaction item. So this is what you've entered into Crunch. So this is the data at the very top, and then this is your bank statement. So again, the system's clever enough to look at your bank statement, read all of these transactions and go, okay, out of everything that's listed here, this at the very top is the most likely of matches. So all you quickly need to do is go, right, that's the description, there's the description, there's the date, and there's the amount. I'm confident that that is the exact match. So I'm going to go down to press match, and it will just keep moving you on through the next entries. And again, it's done the same thing. It's pulled the likely match to the top. So I could go match again. Now, if you were feeling particularly confident, you could even just keep pressing match, and it will just keep getting you through those statement entries as fast as that. Okay. Now, if for any reason you are using a personal bank statement, as I say, a business account isn't essential, and that's not a problem. But what you will need to be careful of is differentiating your personal statement entries to your business ones. So in this scenario, yes, it's a business expense, so I'm going to go ahead and press match. If, however, the next statement entry is a personal one and it's got nothing to do with your business at all, use this button instead, mark as personal. Okay, it will still reconcile it, but it will let you then move on to the next entry. Okay, if you're uncertain of what a particular item is, let's say that it hasn't brought up a likely match, you know, this one, for example, has no likely matches, and you've got a bunch of them, you can always skip it and then return to it later. Okay, it's not going to prevent you from doing anything else just because you're slightly unsure of something. You skip, do the rest of it, come back. If for any reason there is a piece of missing data, so the statement's highlighted this item here, and let's say that this is completely blank, there's nothing here at all, fine, don't panic. Just press new payment. You'll then get a sidebar pop out, and you can actually use your bank statement to create data. Now, one thing I would suggest, especially if you are backdating and playing a bit of catch up, is get your bank statement in. So after you've set up your suppliers, you've set up your clients, you know, you've done your invoicing, get your bank statement into the account, and then just simply use this new payment button, because then that way, not only are you reconciling the account, but you're also creating the information at the same time. So you've kind of saved yourself an extra job, okay? This works really, really well for expense items. Okay, so if you are doing a mass catch up on expenses, you can use your bank statement to start creating those items, save yourself a little bit of time. So that's more or less it when it comes to bank rec. Now, there's a few more scenarios where, I mean, I've given you, you know, just a handful of different outcomes here, from just simply matching to marking as personal and skipping. Bank rec is a beast of its own entirely. Now, it can be as simple as that, but it can be a bit of hair pull scenario sometimes, because there are some things that just aren't that simple. That's when our help center comes into play. Okay, there's hundreds and hundreds of articles on that help center that will outline more or less every scenario that you could possibly think of. So if you do find that you are stuck and then there's something that you just can't wrap your head around, in the top right of your account, you've got this icon here. It should just show as a little question mark in a circle. You can select this, and then a sidebar will pop out here where you can literally search our entire database for any help center articles that are, you know, whether that's expenses, whether it's bank rec, whatever it might be. Pop a keyword in and it will bring you back relevant searches. You'll see here though, because I am in the banking section, it has already returned me some relevant articles. So have a browse of that bit first. You might find something that you're after, you know, how to upload your statements, for example, how to reconcile an entry that's not in Crunch, which is the payment scenario we talked about, or simply search for something instead. You can do all of this from in your software, and it will then take you through to the Help Center article, where it gives you step-by-step instructions. And we've even got videos as well, if you prefer to visually watch it take place and then give it a crack yourself. Alongside that, you've got things like business guides. So this is things like business mileage allowances, tax thresholds, you know, some extra handy bits as well. You've also got things like our community forum, so get stuck into that. That's really, really handy actually, and it's quite new, to be fair. It's a forum just completely dedicated to our community members. You can ask questions, you can get stuck in with other people's businesses, you can share skills, share ideas, things like that. It's a really, really good place to start. Again, knowledge articles, which I touched on earlier, things like VAT rates, income tax thresholds, things like that. That's going to be your sort of knowledge hub, I guess, for the stuff of that nature. You've got a complete walkthrough video series as well, which, you know, will literally take you through from the start, as we've just done, all the way through to the more complicated areas like bank reconciliation. So do check that out if you get the opportunity. You can also upgrade. This is for our Crunch free members, of course. If you want to upgrade to our services, absolutely love to have you on board. Check out what we could offer you there. And again, we've got a Facebook group similar to the community forum that I mentioned earlier. but again, of course, it's on Facebook instead. It's more or less the same thing. And then lastly, I'm just going to quickly touch down on additional services. Now, some of you might be interested in things like Snap that I touched on earlier, which is the telephone, the mobile app for your expense items. So if you do want to find out what else we can do for you, just go to the bottom left and select add-ons. And then it will bring you a page of all the additional things that we could help you with. If you wanted to perhaps chat to an accountant, you can book an hour of their time. You know, if that's all you wanted to do, if you wanted to get some advice on something, you know, that's quite bespoke, book in a session with one of our accountants. All you've got to do is go to that page, press book a session, pick the date, the time, and the subject, and away you go. It's as simple as that. You could also have a look at other things like banking partners. So if you don't have a business bank account yet, look at some of our partnerships with banking that we've got. You know, Tide, for example, as we can see, we have a banking partnership with. Have a look at those services. And then lastly is the Snap service as well. Now, mine's already active at this moment in time, but if you do want to get that activated, there's two versions. You've got Snap Lite, which is completely free. You're able to do 15 uploads per month for nothing. Or if you did want to use an unlimited version, that will cost you just £3.50 plus VAT instead, and you can just snap away, you know, and they'll upload into your account as well. What you have to do with that though is press activate, and then it will ask you for some login details. It will tell you to basically download the app on your phone, and then you have to log into your phone app, and then you'll get a token, so you can connect the two together that way. So press activate, download the app, sign in to your Crunch account on the app, and then the two will synchronize together via a token that it gives you. Some other additional bits and pieces which I'll quickly skim over. We've got a jobs board as well, so if you are looking for new work, check that out as well. You can find your next gig on there if you need to. Again, there's another banking partnership of ours and some other bits and pieces that you might find helpful as well. So good, rich source of extra features and functions for you there if you need them. The other bits while we're on add-on, I'll quickly skim over, is VAT. So this is a brand new feature that we've introduced. Again, this is for, you know, if you're on Crunch Free, if you're on Crunch Pro, it's likely that you've already got this if you're VAT registered. But for Crunch Free members, if you wanted us to take care of VAT returns for you, absolutely fine. We can now do that. So check out that VAT returns page. And then also lastly is self-assessment, the all-important self-assessment. As a sole trader, every single year, every year between the 6th of April and the 5th of April, you have to report your finances to HMRC via a self-assessment. Now, they're always due on the 31st of January the following year. So let's take this year. So from the 6th of April this year until the 5th of April next year in 2022, I then have to file a self-assessment with HMRC by January, the end of January, the 31st in 23. Okay, so you have to do that. Okay, whether you get us to do it or whether you're quite happy doing it yourself, entirely up to you, but just know that the service is there if you want to use it, and of course we would be happy to do it for you. All you need to do is keep your records up to date, expenses, invoices, and then go to this section here, and then you can select the tax year that you want. One thing that does make the process super easy is the fact that we hold all of that data. So what happens is it all just gets automatically pulled onto the self-assessment questionnaire for you. So it's just a case then of going through the form, making sure that it's all okay. It's a simple checkbox exercise. Go, yep, looks good. You know, it pulls through your income, it pulls through any sole trader expenses that you've created. You go, oh, you know, check all of this, go all the way down, and then you'll just press save and submit. Once you've done that, it will then give you a prompt as to how much the cost of the service will be. I won't bore you to death with all of that, but it really is that simple. Fill in the questionnaire. Most of it's going to be done for you because of the data that you've put in. Pay for the service, and then we will take care of the rest. So that's producing it and filing it with HMRC if you want to take the sort of burden off your shoulders, if you will. Again, though, if you are happy to do it yourself, absolutely fine, not a problem at all. Lastly, then, I will very quickly, just for those of you that are on Crunch free. Again, if you do want to upgrade your service at any point, jump to the upgrade tab. It will give you an overview of what's included on the Crunch free service. It will also tell you what you could get on the Crunch Pro services. And if you do decide to take the leap and say, yeah, this is fine for me, I'm going to get that support, get a consultation call booked in and speak to one of our advisors. Now, they will go through your circumstances when they talk to you with a fine-tooth comb, so they will be able to suggest to you the right package for your business. And even if you've been sole trading for a while, and let's say you're earning a certain amount per year, they'd even be able to suggest to you when it's the right time to go limited, if that's something that you want to do as well. So a handful of different features there. Hopefully you guys and girls have found this helpful. Hopefully it's been informative and you've got the most out of it that you can. Like I say, you are going to get copies of this, so I'm aware we've covered quite a lot of stuff today. So we'll quickly go through a short and sweet recap of what we've gone through. So what we've done is setting up the bank accounts. We've gone through logos, business addresses, open banking we've touched on, which again I will strongly recommend once more. We've gone through suppliers, clients, invoices, expenses. We've talked briefly about reconciling accounts as well, and we took a look at the in-app help center. Now, some of the resources that you might find that I promised helpful are, now depending on the service, so if you're on Crunch Free or Crunch Pro, you've got your own help center there. So if you're on Crunch Free, it's going to be help.crunchfree.co.uk. If you're Crunch Pro member, it's going to be help.crunch.co.uk. So just omit the free bit after Crunch. Otherwise, it's exactly the same. So help.crunchfree.co.uk or help.crunch.co.uk. Nice and simple. For knowledge, so for things like VAT rates, income tax, any updates with government processes or changes to government legislations that are likely to affect a business, go to crunch.co.uk/knowledge. Check out our social channels as well. So you've got Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, or our YouTube channel. Now, our YouTube channel, I would strongly recommend looking at if you get the chance. There is tons of videos on there, help videos, update videos, everything that you could imagine will be on there for you as well, including this video. This is going to be uploaded onto our YouTube channel. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the Crunch Community Forum, which again, I would strongly recommend checking out. That doesn't matter whether you're a free client, a pro client. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you don't even have to be a client. You just need to set yourself up with a login, get yourself into the forum, and then you can chat with like-minded individuals as well. So now that we've gone through all of that, as I say, I do hope that it is helpful, and thank you, for all of your time. I'm aware that we've slightly overrun, so thank you very much for your patience, and apologies once again for the technical difficulties. Wouldn't be a session or a live class if you didn't have technical difficulties, so we got to experience that together. And I hope that you enjoy your experience with Crunch Free, and if you're a Crunch Pro member, I hope that you got a lot out of this as well. Any questions, feel free to call your client management team. They can go through anything with you directly. But for Crunch Free, any questions, anything like that, community forum, use the help center. And I will also have a look back at the questions asked during this session, and I'll reach out to you personally if they haven't been answered. I'm going to have a quick look at some of them now. I won't keep any of you any longer if you do need to dash. Like I say, I appreciate all of your time already. I will have a quick peek at the questions now, though, to see if there are things that I can cover while I'm here. Okay, well, in fact, it looks like my colleague Katie has been an absolute star and has managed to answer pretty much all of them. Thank you very much for that, Katie. I'll tell you what, that has saved me a lot of work trying to juggle between doing the presentation and also answering the questions. So again, though, I will have a look at them. I'm sure Katie, from what I can see, has gone in on all of the answers for you. So hopefully you guys have found that really helpful. Once again, thank you very, very much for your time. Have a great end to your week and have a lovely weekend. All the best. Take care.